The studio lights were blinding, buzzing with the soft hum of voltage and tension. The air was cool, artificial, but laced with a current of heat that pulsed beneath the surface like the moments before a storm. Cameras panned slowly across the audience, polite applause, curious eyes, the faint rustle of movement as viewers settled in. Then came the voice, smooth and commanding, echoing through every corner of the stage. "Welcome back," Oprah Winfrey said, her smile warm, though edged with something unreadable that day. My next guest is no stranger to controversy. Former Congresswoman, military veteran, and 2020 presidential candidate, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi stepped into the light, calm but alert. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, the white of her blazer standing in stark contrast to the jet backdrop behind her. Her palms were cool, but her heartbeat thudded hard in her chest, not from fear, but focus. She had walked into enough lions' dens to know when the claws were sheathed or ready to strike. Oprah leaned forward as the audience gave a respectful, if cautious, round of applause. She had a reputation for empathy, for connection, but also for pressing in, finding the crack beneath the surface. Today felt different. "I want to talk about something that's always intrigued me." Oprah began, tilting her head. "You've made headlines for your politics, your independence, and your faith. You've been open about following the Hindu path, chanting mantras, believing in karma. Do you really think that's compatible with leading a modern country?" The audience gave a collective, subtle inhale, a beat too sharp, a tone a bit too amused. Tulsi felt the shift, a soft mockery wrapped in curiosity. She could have blinked. She could have shifted, smiled politely, deflected. But she didn't. She leaned in. "Let me take you back to how she got here, because the moment wasn't born on a soundstage. It had roots that went back to her barefoot childhood on the beaches of Hawaii, where she and her siblings raced through the salt air, their mother's chants echoing through their small home, blending with the sound of waves. Her father, a public servant and passionate advocate for education and discipline, had taught her that service wasn't a slogan, it was a way of life. Tulsi's soul was shaped by sacred texts and morning yoga, by prayers sung at dawn and the quiet conversations she had with herself during the hardest moments of military training. It wasn't just ritual, it was armor, it was anchor. When she deployed to Iraq with the Hawaii Army National Guard, the heat was brutal, the fear more brutal still. She watched friends break under the weight of loss, saw lives ended in a blink, and in the quiet after firefights she'd kneel in sand, strewn barracks, fingers at her prayer beads, chanting softly. Seeking stillness, a connection to something larger. It wasn't just Hinduism, it was peace in a world on fire. That same depth had unsettled both allies and enemies in politics. She didn't fit the mold, she wouldn't parrot party lines. She called out military overreach when others cheered it. She spoke of unity when division paid better. And when reporters scoffed at her mantras and called her beliefs exotic or strange, she'd smile, unmoved. But today, it wasn't a reporter, it was Oprah, the woman millions revered, the woman Tulsi herself had once admired. Tulsi looked out at the audience, then back at Oprah. Her eyes were calm, steady, "You know Oprah." She began, her voice gentle, unhurried. "When I was 19, I walked into a military recruiting office and raised my hand to serve this country, not because I was promised comfort, but because I believed in freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to believe or not believe. That's the soul of America." A hush fell. Not a pin drop silence, but a listening silence. "My faith," she continued, "teaches me to see the divine in every soul. It teaches me compassion, courage, duty without ego. It taught me to care for my brothers and sisters in uniform, even when they believed different things, even when we came from different worlds. That's not incompatible with leadership. That is leadership. Oprah blinked. She shifted just slightly. Tulsi wasn't done. There's a quiet kind of intolerance that's dressed up in politeness, she said. It sounds like curiosity, but it feels like a warning. You're different. Be careful. Don't bring your whole self here. But I've learned that true strength comes from honoring who you are. Completely. My faith isn't a campaign strategy. It's not a talking point. It's why I'm still standing. The audience was still. Not frozen, just gripped. Even Oprah seemed to draw a breath, slower than before. Her eyes flicked down to her notes. Something had changed in the air, but this wasn't a showdown. This wasn't a victory lap. Tulsi glanced briefly at the crowd, then softened her voice. I'm not here to convert anyone, she said. But I'll never apologize for finding meaning in ancient words that have helped me serve with love. I think, if we let go of judgment, if we choose to understand instead of mock, we find common ground, and Lord knows we need more of that. That moment broke something open, not just in the room, but beyond it. In the weeks that followed, clips of the exchange flooded social media. Some called it brave, others controversial. But many, surprisingly many, called it necessary. And behind the scenes, something else unfolded. A young producer on the show, Malika, 27, from Newark, had been watching from the wings. A quiet Muslim, she'd long hidden her prayer beads in her desk drawer, afraid of being seen as too different. But that night, she walked home with her head a little higher. The next morning, she pulled out her prayer rug at lunch and didn't care who saw. In another city, a veteran named Chris watched from his cramped apartment in Phoenix. He'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan. PTSD had left him hollow, angry. Religion, he'd walked away from it years ago. But hearing Tulsi speak about finding strength in stillness, about not having to be perfect to be whole, something cracked open in him. He emailed her team just to say thank you. There was also Oprah. A week later, she invited Tulsi back off camera. No mics, just tea, just talk. And for the first time, Oprah asked questions not to challenge, but to understand. They sat for hours, not always agreeing, but always listening. The headlines would fade, of course, as they always do. But in the quiet corners of the world, in schools, in homes, in foxholes and mosques, in churches and temples and hearts, still searching, that moment had become more than a segment. It had become a spark. Tulsi didn't need to win an argument. She didn't come to conquer. She came to be real. And in doing so, she reminded everyone watching of a truth older than politics, older than fear. That faith, in any language, in any tradition, when rooted in love, doesn't divide us. It makes us whole. And sometimes it leaves even the most powerful voices speechless.